Hi, thanks for checking out this training to complete the FY23 compliance plan and cost analysis in EGrAMS. My name is Marla McCowan. I'm the Deputy Director and Training Director with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. We designed this training to assist trial court funding units with the compliance plan and cost analysis for the next fiscal year. Project directors or the primary point of contact for each funding unit should watch this session, as well as anyone else assisting locally with the application process. This session will cover setting up or modifying a user profile, starting and completing the application and cost analysis, new topics for this year's planning, tips and answers to frequently asked questions, and submitting the application and supporting documents through EGrAMS. For the first round of submissions described in the MIDC Act, EGrAMS will open on April 1st, 2022 and close on April 26, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Subsequent submissions will also be controlled by statute, so please check the deadlines for completing any further submissions. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to your regional manager. Thanks everyone for joining today. This is going to be a training for the MIDC's grant management system in EGrAMS. We're going to be working on the fiscal year 2023 compliance plan and cost analysis. This will be an opportunity to submit a compliance plan and cost analysis for trial court funding units for fiscal year 23. We're going to start this next month. So this session is broken up into a couple of parts. We're going to go through the basics of EGrAMS, and then, for new and returning users, do a little bit of a tutorial. We're going to walk through starting the compliance plan, submitting it, and any questions or concerns that you might have. The one thing that I just wanted to mention here, just so that everybody gets started, and if you're looking at the screen or you're ever going back to EGrAMS and getting started with the MIDC's application, you want to make sure that you're actually using the MIDC's EGrAMS program. It's kind of surprising, but we do get a lot of questions about this. People Google EGrAMS in Michigan and they land on DHHS's site and they get some sort of message that they're an invalid user, an inactive user, something like that. I know it seems a little bit silly, but I just want to make sure that when you are looking for the MIDC's EGrAMS application, you're actually using the MIDC's correct site. You know you're in the right place if you see the MIDC's logo up in the top left corner, or if you're looking in the website address, that you can actually see MIDC in the website address as well. So I kind of put a little red box around it here, so you know what to look for to make sure you're in the right place before you give us a call. If you have never used EGrAMS before, our EGrAMS system, you do have to create a user profile. It only takes a couple of minutes. You'll go to the website address that I just had up on the screen a minute ago. Over to the left-hand side, there's a menu of options for you to create a user profile. You can do this yourself. You don't need permission to do it. And once you've activated your account, you really are ready to go. So just if everybody, I know some people are joining the session, you already have a user profile, bear with me just for a couple of minutes here. For new users, what you're going to want to do is click on that box that says create a user profile. Pardon me. You're going to get just a basic screen here that just asks for some identifying and contact information to create your account. You're going to need to fill out anything. I put a little red circle around this. Anything that has a little asterisk next to it needs to be completed. So your login name, you need to create and confirm a password and provide your contact information, your address, your email, and everything there. You also need to fill out a couple of other pieces, including your designation, which would be your title within your system. When you get to this part here, designation or title, that is going to be your job description within your particular system. And the way that you get to this is you're going to use the little lookup button. I'm going to use that term a lot during the session today. When I say lookup button, this is a little rectangle that has 3 dots in it. We call that the lookup button, the lookup feature. And this is how you populate a lot of the blank boxes throughout EGrAMS. You use that lookup button, and it will bring up a dialog box of options for you to choose from. So in this instance, when you're creating your user profile, if you've never done this before, you're going to use a lookup button here and then find the job that best matches your position description. In this instance, I'm going to choose Manage Assigned Council Administrator. From the dialog box, you would just click on that button there, and then it will populate automatically. You're going to want to do that to make sure you've got your correct title in EGrAMS. The other piece that you need to choose sort of carefully and correctly is this thing called roll code. Again, we're going to ask you to use the lookup button there. And if you are setting up an account for the first time, please make sure that you select grantee. This is really important here. Some people, I'm not sure why this is confusing, but for some people, we had them setting up their permissions, their accounts, and they were picking MIDC commissioner or grantor. So that would be incorrect. And it's also not going to let you connect to your particular system. So don't choose anything else other than grantee. Once you populate those two fields, you will be able to move on to the final two fields here that you need to populate to connect yourself to your funding unit, which is your parent agency. This is the funding unit that you are working in. And that could be, you know, the name of a county, or it could also be, for example, a third-class district court. And then the other piece, the last piece here is the county itself. So for example, if your parent agency or your funding unit name is 20th District Court in Dearborn, for the county, you're going to pick Wayne. Okay, and you just complete those pieces and click OK. The last step that it will ask you for is to select a security question. And once you click OK there, you're going to get a little dialog box. You can choose 2 security questions if you want. We only require 1. And really the only purpose that this serves is for later on for password retrieval. In case you forget your password, you can reset it yourself, assuming you remember, you know, whatever the answer is to the security question that you select. So for example, here, what city were you born in? You know, you type your answer, whatever the town is, click OK. And then your credentials have been created successfully. So you can go back to the account now and proceed with the rest of entering your application or modifying your credentials at any time. So I just wanted to mention that here because I know in some instances people say, okay, I set it up. Do you have to do anything else? The answer is no, really. I mean, once you are connected to a system and you're able to move through the application, if you're the project director, you can just get going. You don't need any further authorization from us. So for returning users, I recognize a lot of faces here, and I know a lot of people are familiar with eGrams. Just a quick little bit here. Logging back into the account if you haven't used your credentials in a while, if you weren't the person responsible for quarterly reporting, maybe you're just returning to the compliance plan after not picking up eGrams for about a year or so. Just a couple of things here. Hopefully you do have your username and your password. This would be the same one that you had set up previously. You should be able to log in here. If you forgot your username, you can give us a call. We can help you navigate that and make sure that you have the correct email address so that you can reset your password. We can't reset your password for you. We do get a lot of those questions. Can you help me reset my password? The answer is no, we can't reset that for you, but you do have control of changing your password, or if you forgot it, just retrieving as well, as long as you know your username. So it can help with your username. Once you know your username, you can use these 2 features to either change or retrieve your password and reset yourself. And you might want to, for whatever reason, you might want to update your profile. You have the full control to do that at any time. Once you land on this welcome screen, this first tab here, the home screen, you can log in and change your user profile. For example, maybe your address has changed. You want your email might have changed. Maybe your job description has changed, your title, something like that. You have the full ability to make any of these modifications that you want at any time. And then just click OK and it'll save. Any questions about some eGrams basics here before I jump right into the FY23 compliance plan? I'm waiting for a second just in case. My whole gallery and chat and everything is minimized on my end for the recording. So,
Marla, there's nothing in the chat yet.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to jump right into starting the FY23 compliance plan. We're going to start on our website. Again, the application is at egrams.mi.com/MIDC. This is the address. If you're later referring to these handouts, we're going to make sure that these are hyperlinked for you so that you can use them. You can also get to the MIDC's eGrams program from our website at michiganidc.gov on the grants page. So you're going to log in, like we talked about just a minute ago, using the credentials that you either newly created or set up at any time in the last year to use MIDC's program to complete the compliance plan or quarterly reporting. Click OK to log in. I'm going to be using here in this particular training session just a sample for training purposes. In the past, we've used Huron County. They've been very generous in letting us use them as a model. I just want to emphasize here, this is just a sample for training purposes. Any numbers or text or anything that I'm putting in here is really just for purposes of this training exercise today and not necessarily reflective of something that the commission has approved or will approve in the future. It's really just for purposes of filling out this application. The other thing that I want to mention here too is if anyone is following along at home, you've clicked on and you're trying to log in and start the application. This is a test environment that I'm working in for these slides and these screens. EGrAMS is not going to open until next week. We're aiming for April 1st. If we can get it open a little bit earlier, we will do so. It will open no later than April 1st. So if you're logging in and trying to start this process right now, we had a couple of people stop us yesterday and say, we're not seeing these things. It's because it's not there on the live site yet. I'm working in a test environment, but you will be able to do this as of April 1st. So starting the application is a two-step process. For anyone else who did this last year, you might remember you have to take two steps. The first is initiating the application and attaching it to your funding unit. And then the second step is actually entering the information in the compliance plan and cost analysis. So to do the first step here, if you're the first person starting this for your funding unit, you are going to be considered the project director and the person who owns the application. You'll be able to control who has access to entering information later on as well. And you'll be the person responsible for submitting the application itself. If you're not that person, you might want to hold off on the initiation process. But assuming everybody on this call today and watching is a project director, this is how you initiate the application. You'll go from this home screen across the top, the ribbon, the menu here, the ribbon of menu, whatever it's called, the menu here. Look for the project director and hover over that. You'll get a drop down once you hover over. It's a little bit of an imperfect system here because it's a dynamic menu, but I grabbed a screenshot. You're going to get this menu of options. The first piece here is to start a new application. This is the one that you're going to want to select to start the FY23 application in EGrAMS. So start a new application. Make sure you're in the add mode here. You might land on either change or review, but make sure you're in the add mode. This should be where it defaults to. And from the lookup menu, again, we're using that term again, from the lookup menu, you'll get a dialog box. The only option should be CPA 23. So you'll select that and click OK. And it'll say that the record was successfully added. This is the first step again for adding a compliance plan application to get started for FY23. I just noticed a question popped up or something in the chat.
Yes, I was just going to say, Marla, you have a question in the chat. And the question is, will the nonprofit PD offices have a completely separate application this year?
The answer is no. We will get to the systems who use a vendor or a nonprofit model for a public defender office. That's all in the same application that is submitted by the funding unit. There is a separate tab to be completed for those costs, but it is not a separate application. Okay. Thanks for that.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So once you have selected the CPA 23 to add that, that's the first step that you've completed for adding the application to get started. A quick note here, I noticed a couple of people who are registered here for the session today are what we describe as multi-agency users. So this is going to be a project director who works in a couple of different systems. The way that you would add applications here, you're going to have to do an application. You're going to have to initiate an application for each of the systems that you work in, but it's a fairly easy process. You're going to go to that same menu, the project director, and land on and start a new application. But you're going to have, if you are a multi-agency user, you're going to have a lookup button that allows you to select from the dialog box the system that you want to work in. And once you select a different system, then you choose OK. And then just make sure that whatever line you're working on, that appears there, that you are working in that particular system for entering the application. Any questions about that? Okay. I have a couple other pieces on multi-agency users later on as well. But please feel free to stop me if you have anything else. So I'm now, once we've completed that first step, which is initiating the application, now we're ready to enter the information in the compliance plan. The way that you would do this is now you move over to the grant application dropdown from the menu there, hover over, and you'll see two options under grant application, enter or print and submit. That print and submit will feature that a little bit later on in the session. That's an opportunity at any time you can go back and print and view, review the application that you've already started. But for this first step here, we're going to enter the grant application. Once you hit that enter button, it's going to display this way where you can see the application entry is pending. That's a hyperlink. Again, you click on that in order to get started. And it will open a reminder here of when the deadline is, which is April 26th at 11:59 p.m. You just have to acknowledge that deadline and it'll let you get started. So this is the application itself. This home screen here, the applicant information, basic information should be pre-populated for you. Last year, we had a couple of people who noticed that the federal ID number was wrong. If your federal ID number is wrong, you're not going to be able to change it yourself. We don't really use that federal ID number for anything related to payments or anything. We work through Sigma in order to initiate and distribute the payments. But if you feel strongly about making sure that the federal ID number is correct, just give us a call. We can change it on our end here. We can update the agency profile. But if you try to change it here, you'll get an error out later because it's not going to match what's in our system. But otherwise, if you want to take a look at this, if everything seems fine, you can just move through it. I'm going to show you how to move through the compliance plan application through all of the tabs here and to navigate around the system, which I think is helpful if you're a new user or you need sort of a refresher. Anytime you land on, this is sort of the landing screen here, you'll see where you're landing. I'm just taking a little bit of an excerpt at the top here so you can see how to navigate around. Any questions or anything? Okay. All right. So this is sort of that, kind of just a little bit of a slice of the screen here where you see how to navigate around. I'm going to start clockwise, navigating by section up at the top. If you look sort of at if this was a clock here, looking around at the top or 12 o'clock sort of spot, navigating by section around the compliance plan. What we call these little tabs are the sections of the plan itself. You're going to move from left to right, ideally here, starting with the applicant tab where you landed initially when the application opens, and you can move through and complete the additional information and go standard by standard by standard, completing all of the standards, the tabs or sections as they're described in EGrAMS, moving through all of those all the way to the compliance plan, the source of funds, and the final pieces there. One nice thing about EGrAMS that we found is that as you're working through this, you don't have to go in order. If you want to get started and jump right over to indigency and see what those questions look like on the indigency screening section there, those new questions that are in EGrAMS for the first time this year, you can do that. You can just move around, you can start to enter information and make sure that you save your work as you're going, and that's perfectly fine. And you can skip back and forth at any time. If you see by the sections, you can move jump section by section through those back and forth arrows that are right next to, as it appears right now, on the indigency tab. As you work through any of these tabs, I'm moving through the sort of clock here to remind people or refresh or orient you to the EGrAMS navigation here. At any given time, you're going to have 15 minutes to work on a page. The countdown clock will appear in that section there, sort of the top right of the EGrAMS homepage. Anywhere you land actually is going to have this countdown clock going. And I know sometimes it makes me a little bit nervous when I see 3 minutes remaining, 2 minutes remaining, 1 minute, whatever it is. The way that you buy yourself some more time is just hit the save button and it'll reset that 15-minute clock for you. It also will give you a warning when you're about to time out. So the way to buy yourself some more time, hit save. And it'll reset that clock for you. And again, anytime you land on a new section, or a new page, it will reset that clock for you as well. As you're working your way through the application, if you have any questions about MIDC's policies, you can click on that Show Documents file, and it will take you to the latest version of the MIDC's grant manual, which was just revised and republished by the MIDC after the February commission meeting. You're welcome to check that out at any time. It'll take you there. It's also available on our website on our grants page at michiganidc.gov, again on the grants tab. Moving down here through sort of to the clock here, sort of around the 3 o'clock position, if you can see, if you can navigate by section, jump around, you can also move page by page by page. And in fact, if you get to a page and you don't make any changes to the information and try to hit save and move to the next page, you're not going to be able to. It'll say, you know, there's no new information here. This is how you move on to the next page, is just click on the button, the arrow, to move you to the right. So you can move back and forth, you know, between exact pages within any section. And if you want to see how many pages are in a section, or what you should, you know, a way to just sort of jump around as well, is you can show the tree. Within any given section, you see a little dialog box popped up there. For example, I'm on the standard 1 tab here. I know that because standard 1 is grayed out along the sections there, the tabs along the top. If you want to see how many pages I need to complete within the standard 1 tab, you'll see there's 3 pages there. So you can either use the arrow button to navigate back and forth by page, or all of those are hyperlinks as well. You can jump to a page and click OK to move around. We had a couple of questions last year as people were working through. They wanted to make a PDF of the entire document and kept clicking on this PDF button here. Just a reminder here, this piece, if you click PDF and you're within a particular section, you're only going to be able to make a PDF of that section. Now, that might be helpful, you know, if you're working on it and you want to collaborate, say you're working on the new indigency tab here, the questions related to indigency and contribution, and you want to collaborate you know, with some other stakeholders or partners within your funding unit. You can just make a copy of that section and then send it over to, you know, to anybody else, or you can print and review it yourself if that's helpful to you. But again, this is just going to be a PDF of the section. Later on in the session, I'll show you how to make a PDF of the entire document, either with or without the attachments that you want to submit through eGrams. The main way that you should navigate through all of the compliance plan, the application, the tabs, and the cost analysis is to make sure you're saving your work and moving on to the next page. Really, frankly, I think that the most helpful thing here is whatever, when you open up and start on the applicant tab, you're going to be on page 1, section 1. It really is most helpful to complete it, make any changes that you want to, and hit that save. The save button that moves you to the very next page with the little forward arrow. Maybe it's kind of hard to see, but there's a regular save key, and then save and move to the next page. That save and move to the next page is another thing that I feel like throughout this training, I'm going to say that phrase sort of repeatedly. I see a couple of things in the chat. Anything I'm missing before I move on? I'm going to talk about the new and exciting feature called the copy button next. Anything else I'm missing? So one nice thing that we have this year is the ability to copy over information from the FY22 compliance plan that was entered last year. This is something that, you know, people were sort of, you know, playing around with that last year and nothing really populated. That's because this last year was our first year of using eGrams. But now that we have a full year of the compliance plan last year and we're ready to start the new application, a very nice feature is this copy button, which you can use to populate either section by section or the entire compliance plan. So when would you use this? Why would you use this? If you have no changes to your compliance plan really at all whatsoever from last year, and you really just need to populate the Indigency Screening tab, you might want to just copy everything over from last year. What's going to happen is when you click on that copy button, you're going to see this little dialog box that comes up. Again, I'm in a test environment here. You won't have this test language here, but you will have the option to select FY22's compliance plan, and you can actually click that button that says all sections if you want to copy everything over. You can do that at any time and then just go ahead and make your edits throughout the plan, and again, make any updates or additions that you need to based on new questions that weren't part of the FY22 application. You can also just go section by section. If you're in section 1, standard 1 related to training and evaluation, or training and education of attorneys, you can go back to, you know, your plan from last year and just copy everything over just in standard 1. You don't have any changes. Everyone's going to go to the same. Everyone's going to CDM. We don't have any new attorneys that need any skills training, you know, whatever that looks like, and you can copy that over section by section. The other thing that you could do is copy over the entire compliance plan from last year. So just a couple of caveats here that I just want to mention. If you do copy over everything from last year, that's fine, and you can make any edits that you want. What we've noticed though is that it will copy over the attorney list from FY22. So if you've made changes and updated those to your roster, you might not want to copy over the entire thing. You might want to go section by section as you're moving through the document. What we have done here is, once you remember starting an application and then entering the information, that's a two-step process. What we've done is work with our developer. So the nice thing would be is if you start an application, we're going to have a script running on the back end there that it will populate the attorney list in your FY23 application from your most recent quarterly report. So if you end up selecting the option to copy everything over, you're going to get a warning that says it's going to copy over all the information that's existing in the report right now. So that's going to let you know that it's copying over the attorney list that's pulling from the most recent quarterly report. So you don't have any changes in your attorney list and you don't really have any changes from last year. You just want to make some updates and edits. You might want to copy all, otherwise go section by section. One thing that we had tested in the last few days and have resolved is we've made sure that if you do copy over everything, especially from the cost analysis, it's not going to change the local share contribution that is required for FY23. We'll get to that in a minute, but that is sort of a nice feature that we worked out any bugs there. So you don't have to worry that that will change. You will be using the correct local share information in your cost analysis. Another feature that we've noticed through testing is if you do copy over everything, if you had an attachment, that does not copy over. So you're just going to make sure that you want to update any attachments in this application as well, which again is sort of part of the editing and updating process. The copy feature is a time saver. That's what I would describe it as. So if you are mostly sticking with the same plan as last year, you might want to do it section by section or completely. Questions, concerns? Okay. So I'm going to move back through the compliance plan itself. Again, on the applicant information, we're moving straight, left to right here, just moving straight across the tabs and populating this information. If you do make any changes, make sure you hit the save button. If you don't make any changes, you're just going to navigate over to the very next page using the right arrow. People probably remember, if you're familiar, last year with entering the application on the very first page or second page here in the first section, you have to enter the amount of funds requested and the total project cost. This refers to the total system cost. That's sort of the term that we use, as well as the MIDC funds requested. I'm going to ask that you hold off on filling this, because more often than not, as people were working through the cost analysis, they had to end up going back and making some adjustments here just to be able to finalize and make sure that both of these numbers tie out. So you can just leave these blank to start. Also, if you copy over from last year, don't worry about changing anything here. You can just leave that, and we're going to go back and correct those at the end of the application before we hit submit. You just move on to the next page. I mentioned already too that the local share is pre-populated for you. This is pre-populated with a 3% increase from the approved base from fiscal year 2019. Most places had their local share approved in 2019. We're working off of that number, not a number that's compounded year over year. So we'll go back to the original number and 3%. Why 3%? The MIDC Act says that the local share should increase either by the CPI or 3%, whichever is less. This year, the CPI was in the sixes, I think 6.2 or 6.8, something like that. So we're using 3% because it's less. Don't change this number. If you try to, an error will occur when you try to submit the application. We have done the math for you and pre-populated this, and we think we have made it so that you can't change this number as well. But if you are thinking about it and think that there needs to be a correction, just reach out to the regional manager and we can talk through how we arrived at this number. So again, you're just going to move to the next page. This information here, we're still in the applicant tab, filling out all of the contact information. You need to have somebody designated as the project director. If you've initiated this application and you're filling it out, you are the project director. You can have more than one project director or primary contact. You'll fill this out for each person. You also need to have an authorized official and a financial point of contact. So please make sure you fill out the information for all three of those roles on this applicant tab. You can copy it over. If there's nothing that's changed from last year, you can copy all of this information over. This will, again, if you're just copying within the section here, this will copy everything over. And as I mentioned, it'll populate everything here, which would be the funds from last year. Don't worry about that though, because like I said, we'll go back and fix it later before the submit. The way that you would copy things over here, again, is through this lookup feature and pull from last year. This is what it's going to look like if you hit that copy button. You pull the lookup button. In future years, we might have other options for you to choose from, but right now your only option is the CPA 22 to copy over from. So again, you're going to fill this out for each person or copy over and review it. If you don't have any changes to make or any other people to add, you can either, once you've filled out, for the authorizing official, project director, and financial point of contact, once you fill all those out, it will give you an option. Do you want to add more people or do you want to just move on to the next section? You make your choice there and move on. Moving on to the next tab, which is called additional information. This is where we're gathering information about the system, but first ensuring that you do have authorization to complete this application. The way that we get this here is by clicking this little box that says you certify that you're authorized to submit the information. A lot of people last year tried to fill out all of these gray boxes. That doesn't work. The way that they populate here is after you check that box and hit save, they'll pre-populate for you. And it'll even have sort of a cursive like looking signature there. And it'll be from you since you're logged in and completing this application. Again, if you are not the person who is authorized to complete this application, don't fill this out. Just close it out here and then we can make some other arrangements to connect a different project director to complete the application itself. Assuming you have authorization, check the box, hit save, and move on. Starting with the questions here, moving on through beginning with question number 1 all the way through, there's about 50 or so questions here that you need to answer to complete the application. The very first question that we ask is what type of system do you have currently? If you are copying over from last year in this particular section, you will note we don't have an option called assigned counsel system anymore. We found that after taking a look at all of our systems that we had, no one has a traditional assigned counsel system where the court is making assignments or somebody from the court itself is making assignments. This is because of the new standard requiring independence from the judiciary. We found that everyone falls into one of these categories, really the 4 categories, or potentially even a regionalized system. You can check all that apply here. But just make sure that it's one of these. If you have a question about which one you are, again, reach out to your regional manager. This should be pre-populated for you though, if you copy over from last year. This is, like I said, a little bit of a change. Moving through the rest of this, these initial tabs here, really no changes have occurred. So what you're going to want to do is just fill this out, question, you see this first tab here, questions 1, 2, 3, moving on to the standard 1 tab, picks up with question number 4. Really questions 2 through 44, there aren't too many changes. But again, this might be an area where you want to make some use of this copy feature where you can copy over again section by section or the entire application. But assuming you're moving section by section, hit the copy, it'll bring over everything from FY22 and you can just make your edits as you're moving through the different standards. If you hit the copy button, go ahead.
Sorry, you did have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
The question is there somewhere I can look for basically the person wants to know, do we have any kind of glossary or definition for the EGRAM roles so that the person knows what access and rights comes with each role?
Between the project manager or financial?
I think so, yes, correct.
Do we have anything in EGrams? I don't think so, but the project director is going to be the primary point of contact and the person responsible for submitting the plan and being the follow-up for any reporting requirements throughout the grant year. The financial point of contact really is going to be the person that just deals with the cost analysis and the financial status reports. And the authorizing official is going to be the person who's allowed to sign a contract on behalf of the funding unit.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that we have those definitions elsewhere. Rebecca, can I ask you if I'm trying to remember if we have those somewhere else? Okay. Anyway, yeah, those are the working definitions that we use. And in some systems, that's one person who has all of those roles. I'm not sure that that's necessarily best practice, but we do accept that for purposes of, submitting the compliance plan and all the reporting features as well as signing the contract.
Marla, you're asking about the definitions for those 3 key positions that are
do we have those on our site somewhere? I don't think so, but
We do not. We do not. We do have them referenced in other EGrAMS trainings, and maybe more of definitions that on things that are on the MIDC website. But we look, obviously, and I think you've touched upon this, but the three key positions, the person that signs the contract, the authorizing official, the project director, so the one who's chiefly responsible for communications with all MIDC staff on everything MIDC. And then we ask for a financial contact. And the financial contact, and we've talked about this, I think, at our January training, just where we have some systems that have contract administrators. And I know it's difficult in some of the areas in the UP in the Northern Lower where you don't really have a county administrator, but you've got a variety of other positions that take on parts of that role as the administrator, whether it's the county clerk or maybe the chair of the board of commissioners or things like that. But it's always a good thing to have somebody from the funding unit be the financial contact, because that's where all the information is. It's part of their operation. The contract is with the funding unit. The funds are on deposit and all the reports are run from there. So having someone, whether it's an analyst, a finance director, a county administrator, be the financial contact is advisable. It's not always something that can happen, and it might end up being a contract MAC administrator or an employed MAC administrator. But those are the three key positions that we search for in EGrAMS. And Marla may have touched on this before, but we have the ability within EGrAMS to have multiple project directors as well as multiple financial contacts.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that the project director can make those assignments themselves, or if you need any assistance with making any assignments, then you're welcome to reach out to us and we're happy to set that up on our end. And actually regional managers have the ability to make those assignments as well. If you want to, as a project director, if you want to assign somebody, a financial person, or even maybe the vendor, the nonprofit, to fill out that particular part of the cost analysis, you're welcome to assign them and open that up to give them not just reviewer, but writing access as well. You could give multiple people, multiple different types of or levels of access. Okay, I'm going to move on here through the application. Again, as I mentioned, for standard by standard, you can either copy over by section. If you hit the copy button, you don't have to save, you can just move forward. If you make any edits, make sure that you're hitting that save button. Just work through the application itself. And make sure that you are checking and following along. All of these questions are numbered. You might need to use the scroll bar to make sure some of these questions are a little bit hidden here. So you want to make sure that you're scrolling down and hitting all of these questions. You see they go in order. And so, you're just going to move through all of these tabs. I'm actually not going to go through all of these tabs because I'm on standard 2 here. Moving ahead, if you fill this out, really standard, everything from questions 2 through 44 are the same as last year. So if you are working through this after that first question, which we modified a little bit about system types, everything else through the application for the first 4 standards that were originally approved by the commission to the standard requiring independence last year, independence from the judiciary, those are all the same questions that we had from the application process in FY22. The piece that's going to be new is the indigency screening standard. So if you're thinking about just copying over everything from last year, but you're not sure exactly what last year looked like, and maybe you want to take a look at that before you do so, you're welcome to take a look at last year's plan before you make copies or start copying anything over. We get a lot of questions about this. How do I log in and see what my application was last year? And this is what you're going to do. You're going to be logged in here through your EGrAMS, your regular login credentials. And you go back to, remember I said that print submit application feature would appear as well. You're going to have under the grant application tab. So this is the path that you would use to access your FY22 application. You go over to the grant application from the drop-down menu and hit print submit. This is going to pull up last year's application for you, as well as if you're started to work in FY23, this will appear as well. This is a hyperlink here, this contract sign. This is just telling you the stage that it's in. You can either click on that hyperlink and it'll bring it up. It'll sort of look just like how it is right now, as we're moving section by section on what you submitted last year. Or you can do a PDF, make a PDF of the document and save it to your desktop, print it, or share it with some of your other partners that you're working on through the application process. Some other things that you might want to access from last year as you're working in your application is you might want to look at the contract itself, the contract that was signed last year. And we get questions about this too. How do I look at the contract? If you have access to your funding units information, your user in EGrAMS, and especially if you're the project director, at any time you can go back and look at the contract that was signed, even if you're not the authorizing official. The project director from the drop-down menu would click on application status, and then you find and view the contract. So these are going to be these buttons over to sort of the bottom right-hand side. And then another thing that you might want to take a look at, I found this really valuable so far in some FY23 planning meetings, is taking a look at the reports that have been submitted so far. You can check out, the most recent attorney list, make sure everybody there has been updated and you have the most current roster of attorneys, or the quarterly program report if you want to check out, your case assignment numbers, but in particular, the financial status report. This is going to give you a really nice dashboard of your spending through the first quarter. So if you want to make any adjustments in the cost analysis, you might want to check these out as well. The way that you're going to do this is, if you're logged in and you have access to the reporting, you're going to go to the reporting from the drop-down menu and progress reports, then choose the status. This is important. You're either going to want to choose, if you see the status bar there, it says pending, submitted, approved, canceled, pending. I tend to like to pick all. From that little radio dial or whatever it's called, click that button there, all, and then hit find, because that's going to bring up everything. If something's approved, or it might be sent back for corrections, or if for whatever reason we just, haven't taken a look at it yet or finalized it, you've sent something back, make sure you click on all so that you can get to that report. Again, it's going to give you a nice dashboard so you can see your spending to date, especially in that financial status report is a really valuable tool. So again, talking about copying over, this is going to be helpful to copy over everything from last year, but we do have a new set of questions for this year. And if you want to know what that looks like, you can go to FY23 planning. We've got an application that has the questions related to complying with the new standard for eligibility screening, the indigency determination standard that were approved by the commission in February. We have a Word document actually. So this has been sort of a helpful tool for people as they're doing their meetings with their, their local system stakeholders, collaborating on what this could look like. Indigency screening and contribution, this could be new for your system. And if you want to, sort of type up some language here and work through with other system stakeholders about exactly how this is going to work, share, have people make edits, you can do this in this Word document. It's really nice. You can then, as you're working through this Word document, save it. When you get to EGrAMS, get to those questions, you can copy and paste over. It's pretty clean. We've done that. So we did that several times last year, and people really like working in a Word document as well before actually starting on the EGrAMS application. So you have access to that. When you land on this Word document, this application, this is going to have everything, including the questions from last year, as well as these new questions, and walking you through some reminders for what you need for the cost analysis. Anything new is in this red font here, and it's really just this page. This is really the only thing that's new. Everything related to meeting the objectives of standards 1 through 5 have stayed the same. So take a look at this page and keep an eye out for the text that's in the red font so you can see what's new for FY23. When you get to the point where you're copying over, again, everything here appears on this Indigency Screening tab. And it is, like I said, sort of nice because we do have some text boxes here where you have to describe the process for screening for indigency. And if you have that in that Word document, you can just go ahead and copy that over here and then make sure you hit save and move to the next page. Again, this is not going to be something you copy over from last year because it wasn't there. This is new information that you're saving to submit to the commission for compliance with this new standard. So you're going to walk through these questions. As I mentioned, most of the questions from last year are the same, starting with question 45. This is new. After you address questions related to the indigency screening pieces, there's a next section here that deals with contribution. Will you seek contribution from partially indigent defendants? This is a yes/no question, and it's a dependency question, which means how you answer this question depends whether you have to answer the next questions. We call this a dependency question. If you answer no, will you seek contribution from partially indigent defendants? If you answer no, you're not going to have to answer the rest of the questions in this tab. It's only if you answer yes that you'll have to deal with questions 47, 48, 49. So just a little note there. If you click no, you're not even going to have the ability to log into these or to answer these next questions. If you have, if you need additional help here, support, the commission did provide a document here called Frequently Asked Questions about the Indigency Standard, and provided answers related to screening, contribution, and reimbursement. You can get to those answers to FAQs on our website, either on the grants page or on the standards tab. We also have some other resources, including decision trees that might be helpful with planning. Just reach out to your regional manager if you have any questions or concerns as well. But hopefully we've got a lot of information out there and resources to assist with planning. I'm going to move through the rest of the tabs here. Again, please just feel free to stop me if you have any questions so that I can answer them. I'm going to move on to this tab described as miscellaneous. I guess we couldn't quite figure out what else to call this here, but this is going to be a couple of other pieces before we move into the cost analysis. So one question here deals with ancillary staff. If you have new ancillary staff, please let us know. If you have people that are providing, personnel really that don't fall into the category of direct service providers. So attorneys, the support staff from their office, experts, investigators, social workers, those are all direct service providers. When we're talking about ancillary staff, we're talking about, typically this is going to be somebody who might be in corrections, somebody who works in the jail or in the court to help facilitate standard 2 initial interviews or standard 4 meetings between attorneys and people who are incarcerated before the arraignment process. We have a lot of people that fall into that corrections staff sort of ancillary personnel category, as well as we have some systems that make use of a couple of hours or some work from clerks in the court for reporting purposes. So just make sure that you provide information here about the need for those staff members, as well as their relationship to complying with the standards. Another piece here on this miscellaneous tab, people are entitled under the MIDC Act to be reimbursed for the cost of planning. This would be for employees within a funding unit, as well as if you contract with somebody to help you with completing the compliance plan, the time that it is taking for people to prepare this plan and submit it. If you are requesting reimbursement for planning costs, we call this 13.2 funding. This tracks the MIDC Act, one of the statutory provisions. If you click that box yes here, you are going to be prompted to enter a dollar figure. And then later on, we'll talk about making sure that you've attached the supporting documents to substantiate the cost. If it's a contractor, we're talking about maybe a bill from the contractor documenting that you paid them for their time spent. If it's an employee, we're going to be talking about tracking their time, the time spent on planning itself, and the hourly rate that's used for the employee. And I'll show you where to track that later in the cost analysis as well. Another piece here before moving on to actually the cost analysis is you have to identify the attorneys working in your system and the years of practice. What we're looking for here, again, a couple of different things could happen. This is either once you initiate the application itself, again, they're going to run a little program or what they call a script, something like this, which will automatically populate this from your most recent quarterly report. So hopefully we have the most recent list of attorneys. We know there's a lot of overturn, so if you have to make changes, that's fine. If you copied over the entire application from last year, this is going to pull from your FY22 application, the names and P numbers of the attorneys. We understand, like I said, there's a lot of overturn. If you need to, if you're going through here and you need to delete anybody, you're welcome to do that. With the copy feature, you have full ability to make any edits that you need to. So what you're going to do if you need to delete somebody from this list or whatever, the deleting, you're going to click on the little red X. What happens there is like, it looks like a little barrel or like a little bowl or something. Somebody described it as like, it looks like a Winnie the Pooh, like a honey pot or something like that. What that's prompting you to do is to delete the entire line. So the way that you would do it is hit save and it will delete the entire line. If you are going to be, you can delete attorneys if you want to, and here's the instructions as well. But if you're going to be adding any attorneys, you can do that too. All that we're asking though that you do is that you save the attorney in the name using this format. So it's going to be last name, comma, first name, and then their bar number without a P in front of it. This really helps us because we spend a lot of time generating reports of these attorney lists, and it's a nice way for us to weed out duplicates and make sure that we're working with the most accurate roster of attorneys statewide. So please follow this format if you're adding anybody. I'm going to continue to move through the cost analysis now. Any questions or concerns about any of the standards, including our new standard or that miscellaneous tab, which grabs ancillary spending, cost of planning, and attorneys. The last section is the cost analysis. And so the first question that you have to answer is if you're working with a vendor or nonprofit model, public defender office. Most systems in the state are checking the box no. If you're one of the 8 or so systems that we know of that use a nonprofit model, you can check yes, and we'll get to what that looks like in just a few minutes. You still have to complete the basic cost analysis form on behalf of the funding unit, and then move on to the vendor cost analysis piece separately. For most people, like I said, over 110 or so of our 120 systems are checking the box no. We're just going to move through here. Again, this is maybe a nice feature where you want to copy over everything from last year, and you're welcome to do that, or even just copy over the cost analysis from last year. We know that there will probably be, especially if you've got personnel, you might have some COLAs or steps, something like that, where you want to be adjusting the rates. That's fine, but it might save you some work here in populating all of the descriptions and titles. So however you do this, you need to populate the entire personnel section if you have personnel. And the way that you do that is, again, you're going to use this lookup feature. If you try to type in that description box, it won't save. You really do need to populate this from the list of options that we have in the dialog box that will pop up if you use that lookup menu. Try to find the position that matches the description as best as possible. We know that there are a lot of different ways to describe people. But maybe, what we'd like to try to do whenever possible here is avoid using other. You're going to hear me say that a couple more times throughout this piece here. We're trying very hard to avoid using that other tab. Again, this is largely for purposes of us being able to generate reports through eGrams and have a good sense of who's working in these systems. Okay, so if you do pick other, and it actually does look like one of these categories, we might make those adjustments for you. Just want to let you know. And if we do that, we'll let you know. And we're not going to change the rate, or the cost or anything like that. We're just going to change the description, the person's title. And again, that's really just so that we can generate some reports on our end. And we will make sure that we let you know if we do that. And if you really feel strongly about us not changing it, you do have the option to say no, especially on position descriptions. You're not going to have the option on a couple of other pieces like around bar dues and some other things there, but we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But we will let you know if we make any of these changes. As you're working through personnel, there's a couple of things that are also really important to make sure that we are capturing in a uniform way. So we need to make sure that we are capturing the quantity, which refers to the number of positions that are attached to that position description. The rate, which is going to be the payment rate, typically this is an hourly rate. And then the units and units of measurement, which more often than not is going to be an hourly rate for personnel, is going to be a number of hours and indicating that you are paying them by the hour if you're using this rate. Again, this is something too that, you're going to have a dialog box of options. And if you end up, last year we noticed that people kind of flipped these around. And again, what we're trying to do here is be able to generate reports. So if, for example, you pick, chief public defender, this is a full-time position. If you end up, flipping around the quantity I'm gonna just, is there a question before I move on? Okay, so if you end up flipping around the quantity in units, what's going to happen here, for example, is if we try later on to run a report that, we want to know how many public defenders there are in the state of Michigan. If you have flipped the quantity in the units, it might look like you have 2,088 public defenders working in your funding unit. So it's, again, for reporting purposes, we might flip those around. We'll let you know if we're doing that. We are not going to change the rate or ultimately the amount on that line, but it's just kind of refining this for reporting purposes. So as you fill out the personnel line item, just fill these out to the best of your ability. If you have any questions or concerns, let us know. We want to help you get this right and want to make sure that we're doing this, to the extent possible in a uniform way. Anytime, if you do have personnel or really for any section in the cost analysis where you are completing this at all, if you have any numbers here, you are going to be required to fill out this little box here called a narrative. And this is just, really is simple. It could be just, a reason for needing the position, especially if there's a change, or if you're making any adjustments to the pay, something like that, you might want to make a note there. Click on that narrative box, fill the narrative piece out. And again, it doesn't have to be very long, and then click OK to make sure that you save it, save and move to the next section. If you do have personnel, you might also want to fill out the fringe benefits section. This again is something that is sort of unique in the way that it has to be populated, which is in terms of a percent of the personnel total. So the fringe benefit, any of the fringe benefits, and again, you're going to want to use the lookup box there to see what the various types of benefits are that you can select. Oh, there is also an option, but you're going to want to select a percent here, and it will again be driven by the total in the personnel category. So if you don't know the percent, but you know the rate, there might be a little bit of kind of playing around with some numbers here to get this total number that you need in order to finalize this piece and save and move to the next section. The next section deals with contractors, starting with contracts for attorneys. I think just about every system has this in one way or another, even for public defender offices that have, to take 100% of the cases, there is still going to be a line for conflict defense. Just make sure, we've tried to simplify these categories quite a bit. And again, there is always the option for other, but whenever possible, use that lookup feature to select the most appropriate description from the dialog box. Contracts for experts and investigators is another piece here that every system has some funding here for experts and investigators. So please make sure that you populate this line using the MIDC rates, which can also be found in the grant manual. Contracts for construction. This is going to be one piece here where we definitely want to make use of, if you are seeking any sort of construction project, that we're making use of the notes or attaching a file option. So for each line here that you have in contracts for construction, you have the opportunity, each really line throughout the entire cost analysis, you have the option to make some notes. But if you are seeking contract for construction, we're going to want to know line by line specifically what this particular project is for, as well as if you have any estimates, quotes, anything like that, you're going to want to attach that as a file. And the way that you attach a file really for any category, again here too, is you click on the little plus box under the file and it will prompt you to search from your computer the file that you want to attach. Moving on now to contracts other. This last year, the only option was other. We've tried again to come up with the most common types of contracts that people had. Again, for on our end for report generation purposes, and we've noticed defender data, office leases, Westlaw, those were the most common things that we saw in contracts other. Some people use contracts other for sort of a catch-all for everything. What we're going to try to discourage here is, putting things not in the correct category. So if we end up finding something was not in the correct category, again, we might move these around. If it's really supposed to be in equipment or supplies and services, something like that, we might make these changes for you. And again, we'll let you know. And really one of the main reasons here is that we're trying to not have things get lost too, so if you end up putting something in a category that we're keeping track of, like say, for example, reimbursement for the cost of planning, we're going to really just push that to the correct category so that we can track not just how much is owed to you, but that the payments occurred. So again, just make sure as you're looking, is this the most appropriate category? And if not, you can reach out to us and we might change that as well. One area where it's going to be really important for you to make sure that you're using the correct category here is in training and travel. Again, this is like, there's an option here if you're including registration fees for conference, mileage, and all of that. This is also the space where some of our most common memberships are found. So this is going to be, we keep these in the travel category, again, for our purposes, largely for tracking this type of spending. But a lot of systems include membership for their attorneys to the National Association for Public Defense to access their webinars and other program opportunities. A lot of systems also use SATO's Criminal Defense Resource Center for their defender books, their forums, their various resources, including training sessions too. Those rates I've checked with NAPD as well as Mari from SATO. These rates are holding at $40 and $75. So please don't override those. Those are going to be pre-populated for you and just controlled by the quantity or the units that you need, which would be the number of memberships that you're purchasing. The other piece too, this is new, that we specifically added bar membership in here to travel and training. A lot of people do include paying the cost of the base bar dues for their full-time employees who are working as attorneys within their system. If you do have a full-time employee who's an attorney, a managed assigned counsel administrator, public defender, or any of the line attorneys working in the system, you can pay them for their base bar dues, but only the base bar dues, not any section membership. So again, make sure that you're choosing bar membership from the lookup menu in travel and training, and don't change the rates here because again, these are fixed rates that we want to make sure that we're tracking and we're using the correct rates so that as you're paying these out, that you're using the appropriate figure. The other piece on bar membership is we're using this 315 and we want to keep this in this correct category because the State Bar of Michigan has indicated that they might increase the base bar membership rate for attorneys in Michigan. So if they do at some point later on this year, after you submit your application, assuming you use this line, we can go in then on the back end and make that adjustment for the attorneys. So if it ends up being, another $50 or $80 per year, just make sure that you leave it here at the 315. We'll go in and change it. And if if it's already been submitted, we can make sure that we're addressing that. If the contract has already been approved, if that's what happens, we'll end up taking that up with the commission. But again, it's important to keep it here so that we can control that and make sure that you're reimbursed for the correct amount. I'm going to move through, finalizing some of these sections here, supplies and services. This is another one that I'm going to encourage you to make use of the lookup button and avoid using other. We have added several categories here because we've noticed that people were putting things in equipment or contracts, other, whatever. We want everything to be in the same place. And this is especially true for some more common categories that we're trying to keep track of, which includes the cost of planning. You'll see that here in the dialog box. This should be the number that you use back on that miscellaneous tab. If you are seeking reimbursement for the cost of planning, check this box. And make sure that you're including the correct number. Another piece here that we had that's unique to the MIDC Act is if you overspent on direct services in the prior year, you can seek reimbursement for that overspending. But we need to keep that all, again, in the same sort of line item and description so that we can run reports on that and make sure that we're tracking that and providing that information to the commission. So again, please make sure that you put that in supplies and services, and please make sure that you reach out and tell your regional manager about that. And then the other piece here that we included is this cost allocation. You see this in the dialog box, cost allocation. If you are a system that has personnel and you have in the past sought cost allocation, which would be, sort of a general assessment that the funding unit makes for the cost of having a department. I think that's maybe sort of maybe an oversimplification, but just wanted to let you know that this is, this is going to be either falling into one of two categories: cost allocation, where you have the actual amount that you know that your department is assessed each year. There's probably a study that was done. There's a dollar figure that's attached to it. Maybe it was study was done by a place called Maximus or something like that. You have a dollar figure. You're going to want to put this in supplies and services and attach and use the actual number. And in some instances, if you need to, attach the actual assessment if this is a new cost for you. If you are a system that maybe you're a new department and you haven't had that assessment yet, you don't know what the actual costs are, but you are seeking, the commission is authorized up to 10%. You're going to want to do that on the next page. There's another page called indirect costs. There's like a 10% factor, and I'll walk you through that in a second. I noticed
Marla, there is a question
Yeah.
wanting to know if the list of drop downs will be available outside of the eGrams program.
No, but once you're logged, we don't have that anywhere, but I guess we could, let's see, other than what's captured here, there's really only a couple more things that are captured here. I guess I could go in and I can add that to the slide though. Would that be helpful?
I think that would be helpful, Marla.
Okay, and I'll make these slides available then later on if anybody wants to take a look. We did add a couple of other things, including interpreters, transcripts, Zoom. Those are the other things I can think of right now. It's not a huge list, and we do still have the other piece. But yeah, I wanted to highlight these pieces, which were pretty common: the reimbursement, cost of planning, cost allocation with an actual assessment. If you're just using the 10% factor, again, this is sort of shorthand or an oversimplification, but if you're just including 10%, for indirect costs, you're going to use this particular tab here, which is an additional page after supplies and services now. The way that you're going to get this here is on the description, you're going to use the lookup button, and it's really the only option is to choose that indirect costs. And for percent, you're going to use whatever percent, but most likely it's going to be 10. If you use less than 10, you can use less than 10, but you can use up to 10% there. How you get the amount here on the state grant, I'm going to say this a little bit slowly because I think yesterday I said it too fast. And if anybody needs me to repeat it again, let me know. But you're going to use the lookup button for the description, choose the indirect costs, the 10% de minimis factor, whatever it is, enter 10%. And for units, the way that you're going to populate this is to go back and check the total from the personnel and fringes category. How you get the personnel and fringes category is actually, you could go to the next page first, and you can pull this up from the cost analysis summary, and you see the total program expenses for personnel and fringes. I know it's a little bit small here, but you see that 143, 292, whatever it is. So you can copy that number, that 143. So once you enter the 10%, you copy in the 143, 292 to the units, and it will compute automatically to be 10%, and it will populate that state grant line. Does anybody need me to say it again? Did I get it? I know yesterday people were like, say it again. Kelly, do you think I got it this time?
Good, thank you.
All right. So that's how you populate that piece. The last section here is you can go through and you can take a look at the summary of the cost analysis, everything that you've entered. And this is also a nice opportunity to see if you've made any mistakes before you hit the final steps here to complete this. If you notice here, I mentioned already, if you have any categories that have any numbers in the cost analysis, you always have to have a narrative. You can do kind of an at a glance here to see if you've got any of those missing. And the way that you can check that is the narrative, the little, it kind of looks like a Post-it note or whatever. If it's colored in sort of that yellow color, it's completed. If it's grayed out, it means it's empty, and you're going to want to go back and fill out the narrative in the section so that you don't get an error. This is just sort of an at a glance, these higher level categories. I mentioned already, not sure if anybody on this call uses it. Oh yeah, I think some people on this call use a vendor model. So if on that initial page for the cost analysis, if you check the yes button that you do use a vendor or a nonprofit for your public defender office, meaning it's not a county department, it's someone separate that you contract with, you do have to complete this other tab. So you're going to check yes here in this box, and then, and only then, will the vendor cost analysis be available to you. You're going to fill it out just the same way that you do for everyone else. You know, like if you have within your funding unit, personnel, fringes, and the various other categories here, you're just going to do this here for the vendor model. One thing that is really critical for us, and it's actually really helpful for us to know this, especially if it's a new department, or I'm sorry, an existing department and you have new positions, if you could highlight that for us here, that's really helpful as we're taking a look at this vendor cost analysis. So anyway, you're going to go through this here, and this will be for personnel, fringes, contractors, and really everything related to the office. We're going to ask you to fill this out completely. Any questions or concerns about that? I'm not going to repeat it because it's basically sort of the same thing that we've done before, but just kind of have to, you know, kind of repeat that process, especially if you have personnel as well as a vendor. Otherwise, on the vendor, I mean, on the county-based, cost analysis, really the only line that you're going to have for this piece here is one of the options is the vendor or nonprofit defender office. Make sure that as you're going through this vendor cost analysis, the totals there matches or ties out to the line item that you have for the county-based cost analysis or the funding units-based cost analysis. So as you finalize all of those pieces, the last page here is the source of funds. And this is kind of important to make sure that you fill out correctly. And again, this goes back to, remember at the beginning of the session, I talked about how you have to match up here the total system cost as well as the MIDC grant funding, which is the total system cost minus the local share, so that you can total this correctly and it matches back at the beginning of the document. If they don't match, you're going to get an error, which is a pretty common error that we got last year. So this number here is really the only thing that you should be filling out when you get to the source of funds page. So what you're going to do to arrive at this number and enter it here is you're going to take the total expenditures, that 712 number here in this particular instance, and you're going to subtract the local share number, the $80,000, and then enter in the 632, you know, you do the math. And the way that you know it's correct is the total at the top, total expenditures, matches the total at the bottom, sort of the bottom left there, that's 712. And that's how you know it's entered correctly. If it's not entered correctly back at the first page, you're going to get an error once you try to click done that the source of funds doesn't match. Again, this F005, you know, we know that was the most common error that we had last year when people were trying to finalize everything. And really all that it's doing is prompting you to go back to the beginning of the document and have your numbers match. So make a note of your total system costs, the total system costs, as well as the state grant funds here, this number that you entered. Go back all the way to the beginning of the document, and you can skip over to the sections by using this left arrow button. Get back to this page, revise your numbers, make sure that you save them, and then validate. Just again, to kind of run through and make sure that these are matching that source of funds page. And once you do that and you click done, you should be ready to go. And if all sections are validated successfully, you're ready to move to the submit stage of the application. Questions or concerns? So you're going to close out here. And if you want to, you can go back at any time, and pick this back up and, continue to enter anything. It'll prompt you. It's sort of nice. It asks you if you want to pick up where you left off. But otherwise, if you're ready to finalize it and submit, the way that you do this is you go from the grant application, the drop-down menu, and select print or submit. You can come back, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, and print or submit, check that print button at any time and make a PDF copy of your document, print it out for yourself or save it. You're going to be able to access it here through this hyperlink, the application entry, the work in progress. If you do want to print it before you hit submit, or really again at any time, you have these little printing options. I know this is really hard to see, but this is where they appear. They look like little printers. And if you hover over them, they will tell you the different options. One is to print the complete document. The other is the complete document without the attachments. So, if you don't want to print the Maximus study that's 500 pages or whatever. You might want to print without the attachments. You know, in some instances, you might want to have a complete document as well. So up to you. Otherwise, if you're ready to submit, click on the submit button. You're going to get a prompt that says that it is going to, if you hit that button, it's going to move it on to the regional manager for review, which is a submission to the MIDC. Click OK, and it'll go to your regional manager. You will get a message saying that your application has been successfully submitted. So if you do that, you know, before the April 26th deadline, regional managers are going to work on it, and they might return it to you. You know, if they notice something if you want them to take a look at it first too, they can do that. They might return it, maybe have some suggestion, you know, some modifications, maybe a correction, something like that. If they notice something was incomplete, maybe they saw a version of your Word document and something didn't copy over completely, you know, they might ask you to go back and make some revisions just so it's a nice, perfect application for the final submission to the commission. If you do get that, you know, something back from them, you're going to get an email, but it'll also appear in your pending notifications in eGrams. So you'll see that alert there. So you would click on your pending notifications and you can open up. If you're I've used this term a couple of times already, multi-agency users. I know there's a couple of people in the system you work with, on this program today, that you work with a lot of different systems. If you open up, this is actually my pending notifications. I get a lot of these and they all sort of look the same: review status, review status. How do you know which one it is, right? If you hover over it, it will pop up the name of the funding unit. So it looks just like this. I took a picture of my screen yesterday. I know this isn't a perfect system, but this is the easiest way to do it. So just hover over and it will show you which system it's referring to. So just go ahead, if you do get that prompt to make any revisions, go ahead and do that and make sure that you resubmit by the statutory deadline. I'm going to leave this up here just for a minute here, questions, so that you can make a note of my phone number or email address if you want to get a hold of me. And I'm going to open it up for questions now.